In the news this week, an exclusive WAMA news poll reveals Health Minister Amber Sanderson's shocking approval rating as health workers' dispute continues.
Also tonight, the first strike in over 20 years. Nurses and midwives walked off the job across the state. Look after our children in public schools, a school-backed protest to advocate for better education. And later, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loon and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. After WA nurses and midwives went on strike, an exclusive WAMA news poll shows significant disappointment with Health Minister Amber Sanderson's performance. A whopping 97% of participants are dissatisfied with the minister's performance, and only 3% viewers are satisfied. ANF WA Secretary Janet Rea also reacted to the poll in an interview, saying, quote, "I'm not surprised about the result." We'll have more about that on the WAMN Extra News Club. In the meantime, veteran political journalist Peter Candy joins us exclusively on his take of the polling results. Peter, thanks for your time. 3% is not a good number. What does it mean?
Well, 3% approval for the way a dispute's being handled is not a good result. But look, these are very difficult issues, and especially health. And other police is another area, but they are very difficult issues for a government, very difficult issues for a minister who's in her first term handling the portfolio, and it's in one sense it's not a surprise, but nevertheless it's not a good result for the government. It's not a good result for Amber Sanderson.
Do you believe the results show the public doesn't trust Minister Sanderson? What does the number imply in the midst of the strike?
Well, look, taking on the nurses, if the nurses decide to stand up to the government, it's very hard for the minister involved, very hard for the government, because nurses generate, generally speaking, a lot of sympathy and a lot of support, because the feeling is that they do a good job and that they deserve more. Regardless of what the government has offered, if the nurses think that the offer is inadequate, then a big proportion of the population is inclined to back them. But if you look at the offer itself compared to what other workers in the public sector have received, it's comparable, and in some sections it's even better. So the precise details of the offer sometimes get cast aside in favour of the emotion of the debate, and I think there's a lot of emotion in this issue and in this strike.
Do you believe the 3% results will improve, given that Amber has a very tough job ahead of her as the dispute with nurses and midwives continues?
Well, look, yes, I believe that the percentages will improve. I mean, Amber Sanderson is a competent minister. This issue could overwhelm any minister, but she'll bounce back. I've got no doubt about that. This is an issue outside her comfort zone. Every minister worth their salt has to have the blowtorch applied to the belly. And this is the case for Amber Sanderson. Now, it happened to Mark McGowan before, it's happened to many unions before, and it depends how they emerge from it. Do they emerge tougher? Do they emerge wiser? Do they emerge with a bit more guile? I would be surprised if that wasn't the case this time round. It's a big test for her. Obviously, it's embarrassing for her. She'd prefer that she wasn't presiding over a strike like this. It's not a strike of her making, but I would expect that if she's got the Field Marshal's baton in the knapsack, she'll bounce back and be tougher and more match-hardened as a result.
An unprecedented nursing strike went ahead across the state as thousands of health workers walked off the job. The Australian Nursing Federation WA has defied orders from the Industrial Commission as nurses and midwives stand firm demanding a 5% pay rise.
It's a historic day in WA's history. Around 3,000 nurses walked off the job on Friday as they rejected the government's latest pay offer. Despite the Industrial Commission's attempt to stop the rally by threatening to fine bus companies and set up transport pickup rules around WA hospitals, the unions and other stakeholders defied orders.
Came out today in defiance of this government, who this week tried to gag the ANF from speaking to its members. They tried to force myself to lie to members and tell them that their last offer was a fantastic offer for nurses and midwives. They tried to gag the members by not allowing the poll on the EBA offer. And then they made the declaration that they would invalidate the poll and members' opinions. Shortly after that, it got much worse, with the WA Industrial Relations Commission trying to interfere with private enterprise and summoning any transport provider that would transport nurses and midwives to their own rally.
Nurses protested at Parliament House expressed deep concerns over the patient ratio caused to counter the babies, better working conditions, higher cost of living bonus payments, and a 5% across-the-board pay rise. The government is offering 3% to 4.5% before superannuation and cost of living bonus payments. It's a hard sell to nurses and midwives who felt underappreciated.
We think that it's time for them to swap out of their fancy suits and high heels, put on a pair of scrubs, come to ED with us, join us on an evening shift and see what we go through.
We are struggling in our ward so much, all my colleagues, including me. We have actually decreased our hours because we can't handle this much stress. And in a week, at least 4 or 5 times, we have to do doubles to cover because there's no staff.
Premier Mark McGowan maintains the latest pay deal is generous. When pressed about whether the government will continue to negotiate, he says the government wants to resolve the dispute as soon as possible.
Just like to see the matter settled. It was settled last week. They agreed to it, and then they went and campaigned against what they agreed to. I'd just like them to come back and accept that the offer that is available is generous. It meets the requirements they put in place around nurse-to-patient ratios. It rewards those nurses that mentor other nurses, and it puts a incentive payment in everyone's pockets before Christmas of $3,000 on top of the pay increases annually that are more generous than other states are offering.
Now to this week's virus update. Western Australia has recorded 10,520 new cases and 6,679 active cases. A total of 195 people in hospital and 12 people in ICU. There are 15 historical deaths dated back to the 24th of October, aged from 71 to 101 years old. The total number of positive PCR tests was 2,475. Total positive RAT tests were 8,045. The Health Department recommends anyone experiencing symptoms is strongly encouraged to stay home if they're unwell and until symptoms have resolved. And later in this broadcast, Dr. Andrew Miller's commentary on the rising numbers.
The McGowan government has distributed its first round of firearm prohibition orders. The first round of FPOs issued by the West Australian Police Force has been served to 20 of WA's organised crime figures and domestic violence offenders. These new laws will close loopholes allowing criminals to legally access firearms. Certain individuals served with an FPO can no longer possess a firearm or be in the immediate presence of a firearm, including a place where a firearm is present. 12 firearms were seized during the police's first round of FPOs, with a further 5 surrendered after. The maximum penalty for breaching an FPO is 14 years in prison and a $75,000 fine.
The first orders have been served on serious family violence offenders, senior members of OMCG or outlaw motorcycle gangs, and other associates with criminal antecedents. These people will now be prohibited from possessing, using or being around others in possession of firearms.
If you're in an outlaw motorcycle gang in Western Australia, we've told you repeatedly, it's only going to get worse. This is bad, it's only going to get worse. There are more powers coming to the police. There will be more focus on you. Better off just getting out of the gang or leave the state.
A 26-year-old man has been charged after a high-speed chase in Australia this week. A highly armed offender was allegedly travelling at high speed on Hennessy Avenue just after 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Police activated their emergency lights, but the rider did not stop and continued his journey towards Kwinana. Police helicopters monitored the situation and arrested the suspect at Wella train station car park. The man has been charged with numerous offences, including reckless driving to escape pursuit by police, failed to comply to a direction to stop, and an unlicensed person possessing a firearm and
WA Premier Mark McGowan made a significant funding announcement concerning options discussed at a meeting designed to help solve the problem of juvenile crime facing the state. Large amounts of funding will be given to various programs designed to fight juvenile crime. A whopping $40.4 million will be given to Kimberley Youth Justice Response, which incorporates the Target 120 program. Broome Night Patrol will be given a funding boost, as well as Operation Regional Shield. A separate $75 million is going towards expanding early intervention programs and child protection support. The regional town of Carnarvon will receive a new intensive family support team, and Broome will be given $30 million to build a new district support facility for police. Corrective Services Minister Bill Johnston, Child Protection Minister Simone McGurk, Dr Fiona Stanley, Aboriginal Advisory Council WA Co-Chair Gail Beck and Police Commissioner Cole Blanche also attended, among other notable individuals.
A very special performance went underway in Perth tonight as part of the Chinese-English Cultural Exchange. Su Yan Chen, a renowned guzheng principal player in the Chinese National Orchestra of Changqing, performed the classic Chinese music instrument in a one-off concert. Titled The Art of 21 Strings, Ms. Chen's performance is in popular demand with WA's multicultural community. Event organiser Oswald Travel is delighted as tickets sold out this week.
Yeah, very happy with the turnout. In fact, we are almost full house tonight. So it's a great event, multicultural event, and a lot of people gain the great experience about the Chinese music and cross over with the Western music.
Have you ever played a guzheng before, Ivan?
No, I would love to. I grew up looking at those, but in particular in the Chinese concerts, it feels a bit like a piano and a guitar at the same time. It's an art to learn, but I never had the opportunity, but I'll endeavour to learn it one day. We'll recap this week's top stories again in just a moment.
Right now, here's Madeline Lombardi with Western Perspective.
Good evening, Ivan and Melly. Welcome to Western Perspective. I'm Madeline Lombardi. Hundreds of school bags were laid out in protest outside of Parliament House on Thursday to demonstrate a failing education system for the children, parents and teachers of WA. WAMN News spoke with Simone Wheatley-Hay from the National Parents Grassroots Advocacy Group Square Peg Round Hole WA about their involvement with the demonstration and what government officials should be doing for the betterment of our kids at school.
So I run a parent advocacy grassroots group in WA for inclusive education and accountability for children in education, do general advocacy for anyone who feels strongly about education or is coping with challenges and issues in accessing education. And we are working together to try and create systemic change so that we can get support. And what you're seeing behind us here is contributions from members of the community in response to a call out asking them to share their stories to the steps. So families traditionally and students, anyone with any kind of, I suppose, disagreement or dispute or challenge or issue hasn't been able to get support or collaboration or resolution from any aspect of education. Most of them have been unable to get anyone to even listen to what's going on. So we're trying to safely hold a space for those families to express what's happening to them, and also to do so in a way that, I suppose, makes the people who can make change aware of what's going on. So we've chosen the steps because A, all the decision makers are inside, and B, they're a symbol of inaccessibility. These are all families, children, students, community groups who are unable to access education. They're not all people with disabilities, they're not all neurodivergent people, but they're all people who for some reason or another have come across something that has blocked them from getting the education they deserve.
For sure, and I want to know what are government structures, in particular in the education department, missing out when it comes to providing accurate and really well-given support to these children and families?
Sure. So the education department is currently run under what you would describe as a business model, as opposed to a service delivery model. We believe that it should be run like disability services or health, where the primary focus is on the community that's being served. We don't feel like education is being run like that. I mean, the Minister and the Director General don't have teaching experience themselves. We feel like those who should be deciding priorities, deciding whether it's working, deciding where money should go, should be consulting people with disabilities, consulting teachers, principals, not just unions, other commercial stakeholders, corporate services. We believe that people with disabilities should be heavily involved in co-design. They're the people with lived experience who can explain what works. And we also believe that there needs to be some kind of independent oversight and accountability, because at the moment everything is done internally within DOE. And even with the best of intentions, there's going to be a degree of collusion. It's impossible to be impartial from within.
So at the moment, what you're saying is, I think we're relying on structures that are implemented in a business model, for example, or using a structure to fulfill these roles that actually don't go to the source independently. They don't go to see what's happening with the students or families involved.
Or community members or people with lived experience. The state disability strategy is a perfect example of how it should be done. It was co-designed and created by a working group of people with lived experience of disabilities. And they're not the ones rolling it out, and they're not the politicians responsible for implementing it, but the fundamental premise, value, structure, priorities has come from that community. And we believe the same should be done in education. We also believe that there needs to be independent monitoring, transparency, data collection, accountability, because at the moment money is being wasted, and massive amounts of money is being wasted. Programs and services are being put in place that aren't achieving their outcomes, that in a lot of cases are actually making things worse, and it's costing taxpayers millions. It's not smart spending, and it's not what the people of WA deserve.
In a country like Australia, we shouldn't be having to fight for these issues, as you're saying. Children should have that right to be, feel comfortable and safe when they go to school in that sense.
And it's a human rights. Australia has committed to that when they signed the UN documents, the right of the child, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. They've promised to do these things, they've committed to do these things freely, and now it's time for them to hold themselves accountable and start doing them.
Finally, we've had a huge chat about kind of the issues that need to be fixed in that sense. What are you hoping that government structures realise from this demonstration of protest, and what are you hoping they do to change?
The very first step would be admitting that there's an issue. At the moment, it feels like there's a blanket denial and refusal to acknowledge that things are not 100% okay. As far as they seem to feel, things are fine, the sky is sunny. Starting to acknowledge that, okay, improvements need to be made, these things are real. We don't need to be defensive, we need to be collaborative, and then to start collecting data, monitoring, publishing data like all the other states do, and WA doesn't, and then to start looking at things like universal design for learning that are great value for money, have positive outcomes, and are inclusive and aligned with human rights conventions. It's not hard.
And now here is AMA WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and medical commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. I support nurses, and I want to see them get a fair deal. And a fair deal is not the current government wages policy, which everyone points at like it's something that's been decreed from on high. It's not. It's just a policy of the government to say they're not going to pay more than 3% at a time when inflation is 7%. Nurses realise they're going backwards. Their workplace is getting more difficult. The acuity of their patients is going up constantly. The system is in crisis, and people are being expected to do more with less all of the time. And what nurses are most worried about is that people leave and that there's no incentive for others to come in or others to return when they're able to, in order to contribute to the system. And that then leaves patients suffering for the long term, not just for one day during an inconvenient strike, but for years and years, and losing the opportunity to have problems fixed when they should be. So we need to take care of our nurses, and hopefully the government will come to its senses and realise that they're the ones that actually made the wages policy. They're the ones that can change the wages policy. Giving them 5% and 3% instead of 3% is not going to break the royalties bank anytime soon. We see another cruise ship coming in. It's a bit like deja vu, isn't it? We said this was going to happen when the cruises started up again, and although this load of patients is probably not going to make a big dent on Western Australia, you really got to wonder, what does this say about the psyche of our country? That have we got the message yet that we need to breathe clean air? Have we got the message yet that we need to wear masks in indoor crowded locations? Have we got the message that it's not 2019 anymore and that we have to take this virus seriously? There's a lot of evidence now that even if you're vaccinated, repeated infection with the SARS-2 virus is bad for your long-term health. Could well be worse than smoking for your long-term health to get this infection a couple of times a year, because we know that it's causing damage to the vascular system throughout people's bodies. And that damage, like with smoking, may be subtle initially. It may be that young people don't even notice it. But over time, you're building up a debt that one day your health is going to have to repay. That seems to be the message that we're getting from all of the research, and not to mention the fact that there is still the issue of long COVID, which can cause symptoms many months after infection, and also the occasional rare cases of people who were previously quite healthy ending up in the ICU and very unwell indeed in a life-changing way. So the simple things that we can do: stay up to date with our boosters, get our kids under 5 vaccinated, which the government haven't agreed to do yet for reasons which are unclear, and get on with breathing clean air whenever you possibly can. Thanks very much for your time.
That's Dr. Andrew Miller, and now a brief weather update. Good news is on its way as the weather is warming up. 30 degrees on Monday, a record high of 36 on Tuesday, with an overnight temperature of 19 degrees, 33 on Wednesday, 25 on Thursday and 28 on Friday, before it drops to 14 degrees at night. It'll be mostly sunny throughout the week, and that's Western Perspective this week. We'll be back again next Sunday. Until then, Ivan and Melly, it's back to you.
36 degrees is a real scorcher. Slip, stop, slap will be a must. Thanks, Maddie. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the WMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wmnnews.com.au/news/extra.
And that's our news for tonight. Let's find out more about the Victorian election results. National news relays from Melbourne. Leo Puglisi and 6 News takes over now. Buddy, the stage is yours.
Thanks guys, hello, you're watching 6 News on the hour. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. The top stories we're following right now: 4 more years. Labor easily retains majority government in Victoria, picking up several seats as they stay well above the minimum 45 seats that they needed to govern in their own right.
Friends, hope always defeats hate.
I think it's important now that post this election that we come together as Victorians knowing that the best of our state should be ahead of us, not behind us.
By Guy, Matthew Guy concedes for the second time in 4 years and is gone as Liberal leader again, as the Liberals lose several seats and only take one clearly from Labor on election night, while their coalition partners in the Nationals make gains in rural Victoria. Victoria's own Green slide, the party set to pick up Richmond while also doing well in several other lower house seats and a number of upper house seats, as Teal independents get mixed results across 4 different electorates. And Freedom flop. Freedom parties may only pick up a small handful of legislative council seats, if that, after high hopes in both houses, with a number of upper house crossbenchers now looking like they're headed for defeat. Good evening. Many the poll said minority. The coalition said they'd get a majority, but around this time last night the results were clear. Labor winning a 3rd term in government in the Victorian state election in a majority, and Daniel Andrews now set to become the 2nd longest serving premier in the state's history. A number of seats the Liberals thought they could pick up don't look like they're being gained. The party themselves leading up to 3 seats based on results coming in overnight. Opposition leader Matthew Guy led the coalition to a defeat in 2018, and after returning as leader last year, has done it again. The Liberals and Nationals nowhere near the 45 seats they need to govern in their own right, with Guy now resigning. Port Lincoln Holmes begins our special coverage.
Many in the media said Victoria was heading for a minority government, but before 8:30 p.m, the results were already obvious.
6 News can project Labor will win re-election in Victoria.
Labor winning another majority government under Dan Andrews, meaning he will be the state's premier for another 4 years, a total of 12 years in power. That will almost certainly mean he will be the longest-serving Labor Premier in the state's history, as well as the second longest-serving Premier in the state's history.
Yes.
Counting shows 3 Liberal MPs have lost their seats, while the Nationals appear to have picked up all the previous held independent seats in regional Victoria. The Liberals only gaining a single seat last night, though they've had some positive results today. But overall, they have come nowhere close to forming any type of government. Labor has suffered a statewide swing of about 6% against them, while the Liberals are down around 0.5%. The Greens, Nationals, Animal Justice Party, Democratic Labor Party, and the Victorian Socialists are all up.
Leadership is about doing what matters. The people of this great state have endorsed today in resoundingly re-electing our strong, stable, majority Labor government. Friends, hope always defeats hate. We will now deliver bringing back the SEC. To cut household bills because these big greedy companies have told us they're leaving, and goodbye to them.
Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
And as we mentioned there, Matthew Guy has resigned as Liberal Party leader. He says that as soon as it's clear which Liberal candidates will be in the party room, there will be a leadership election. He will not be contesting it. That, of course, leading to speculation former MP and current Liberal candidate John Pesutto could be the leader if he is successful in the seat of Hawthorn. Labor appears set to retain the seat of Melton despite high expectations for independent Ian Birchall. Birchall is third on primary votes at less than 10%. That's a swing of more than 3% against him, while Labor's Steve McGee is up about 3.5%. The Liberals are also around 8%, but that doesn't appear to be enough to take the seat based on the figures we're seeing now. McGee spoke to 6 News late last night from his campaign event.
Oh, look, I think it's... Well, firstly, I'm pleased that we look like we might have won the seat again and been re-elected, and I think that just delivers on what we've done over the last 4 years for the Melton electorate of what the community wanted, you know, infrastructure builds and things like that, and we'll deliver the new hospital starting next year. So it's really important, and it's important for Melton, and the momentum's gathering, and we'll deliver a lot more.
And what do you most look forward to about the next 4 years?
Oh, clearly building the hospital. We're building a number of new schools, primary schools, and a new secondary school, public secondary school. TAFE College will start being built in 2024, and getting rid of those 3 level crossings that people get really annoyed about every day during peak hour when they're stuck in traffic. So they're the key issues that we'll get moving on.
And basically, what is your message to the people of Melton?
Oh, just look, keep communicating, keep telling us what you need. I'll keep going to advocate for it as much as I possibly can. I can't promise that we can deliver everything, but certainly I'll strongly advocate for it, and I'll keep working with the community in all aspects, whether that be sporting, whether that be community, whether that be infrastructure, whether that be educational, and clearly we want to create jobs here in Melton so people don't have to travel outside of Melton.
The Greens have picked up the seat of Richmond that they have been trying to win for 2 decades. The party also doing well in seats like Northcote and Footscray and are very likely to win about 4 seats in the upper house. Reporter Austin Pollock breaks it all down.
Well, Daniel Andrews re-elected for 4 more years while Matthew Guy resigns as Liberal Party leader, all in what has been labelled as Danslide 2.0.
6 News can project Labor will win re-election.
Re-electing our strong, stable, majority Labor government.
The Greens particularly doing well in the seat of Richmond, picking up a seat previously held by the ALP, who are at a disadvantage this election following the retirement of Richard Wine. The Greens' Gabrielle Deventry picked up the seat long contested by the party, with a 12.9% swing away from the ALP. All 3 of the candidates didn't run in the 2018 election. On a better note for the coalition, the Nationals are on track to get back their previously held seat of Mildura from the independent Ellie Cupper following her win in 2018. The same going for the seat of Shepparton, with a 10.5% swing away from independent Susanna Sheed. The Liberal Party are, however, looking to pick up the seat of Hawthorn, which was previously held by John Kennedy. John Pasuto, Liberal candidate, lost the seat in 2018. Now he's on track to be holding it once again, not without contest from independent Melissa Lowe, who is also receiving strong support in the electorate. The latest figures show John Pasuto on 50.7% of the preference count compared to Melissa Lowe's 49.3%. Another independent, Ian Cook, who contested the seat of Mulgrave, fell short of taking the seat from Premier Daniel Andrews. However, Mulgrave did see the Liberal candidate Michael Pastrino get a 5% swing towards him. So overall, a really strong night for the Labor Party. The latest figures show the party is sitting on 50 seats, and Daniel Andrews embarking on his third term as Victorian Premier.
Well, 4 Teal independent candidates ran at this election. Whether any have actually won remains to be seen in Caulfield. Naomi Coltman is 4th on a primary vote basis, with Liberal Deputy Leader David Southwood looking like he'll hold on to the seat despite a strong challenge from Labor. In Kew, Liberal Jess Wilson will succeed retiring MP Tim Smith, despite a challenge from Sophie Tawney and also Labor's Lucy Skelton. In Mornington, some media called it for Dr Kate Lardner late last night, but more results overnight seem to be swinging in favour of the Liberals. And over in Hawthorn, Melissa Lowe at times trying to get ahead of incumbent Labor MP John Kennedy for just the second place position, both trying to stop Liberal John Pasuto from regaining the seat he lost in 2018. Now, we mentioned Melton earlier, but somewhat similarly, independent candidate Dr Joe Garrett did not get up in Point Cook, with about 7% of primary votes, leaving Labor to defeat the Liberals in that two-party preferred contest. Independent Felicity Federico also not close in Brighton, 4th on primary votes, with Liberal James Newbury set to retain that seat in another 2PP contest against Labor. And Benembra, independent Jackie Hawkins, doubling her primary vote from 2018, but is looking like she will just fall short of defeating the Liberals. Dan Andrews faced a challenge from 13 other candidates, many independents, but it'll look like he will comfortably retain Mulgrave without even needing preferences, sitting at a primary vote of around 51%. Independent Ian Cook has about 20%, the Liberals 15%, followed by the Greens and then former Queensland MP and Freedom Party Deputy Leader Ada McClendon. Now, the so-called Freedom Parties, including United Australia, One Nation, Liberal Democrats, Freedom, Angry Victorians, appear to have not done as well as some might have expected. Now, Freedom and the UAP are not looking like they'll pick up any seats. The Liberal Democrats will almost certainly lose both their MPs in David Limbrick and Tim Quilty, but may gain a seat in North East Metro. One Nation could gain a Northern Victoria seat, as could Animal Justice, while the DLP isn't actually doing too poorly. Bernie Finn not fully being ruled out of being re-elected. They're also trailing in Northern Metro and are a chance in North East Metro. Angry Victorians Party MP Catherine Cumming looks like she's gone. In terms of the other upper house minor parties and crossbenchers, Animal Justice Party's Andy Medic gone. Darren Hinch's Justice Party Stuart Grimley and Tanya Maxwell gone. Hinch won't get himself either. New Democrats Kashulia Vagella gone. Sustainable Australia's Clifford Hayes gone. Transport Matters Rod Barton gone. Reasons Fiona Padden actually a chance of retaining her seat of Northern Metro. That means it won't go to the Vic Socialists, who may instead do better over in Western Metro. Legalised Cannabis Law also looking like they will win one seat. They're actually polling well in 2 others. Look, late last night I actually asked political commentator Matthew Hayne about the results for the Greens and some other progressive parties that we're seeing flow in.
For me, the most important thing that I think the takeaway should be is for both progressive parties to understand that this method of door knocking in order to get successful electoral results has now worked in Queensland, has worked at the federal election to an extent in Victoria, and has now worked in the Victorian election as well. This is a long-term strategy that can flip seats and can win, I think, long-term enough seats to be more than just a minor party, and can effectively force whoever is in government to be forced to listen to them as a third largest, almost major party. And especially if their primary vote is able to increase from 13 to 15% over the next couple of years, they keep this door-knocking effort up. There is no reason that the Greens, and to a lesser extent the Vic Socialists, can't become a real force in driving legislation in Victoria and Australia.
Would you say, though, even though they'd be happy to get a huge crossbench support, that the Greens especially might be a bit disappointed they aren't able to actually get a minority where they would be able to, properly challenge Labor on some things? And I know that we imagine they're pushing them, and in the upper house they'll be pushing them, but they certainly can't, force Labor to do anything. Labor will have that majority in the lower house.
Yeah, they don't have the leverage of a minority government or a hung parliament. However, they still have a handful of people there who can put pressure on in other ways. If you have 5 MPs who are leading a protest of the current sitting government over a policy, for example, on a climate policy regarding oil and gas, that can get plenty of people to a protest. That is the type of action that 5 MPs being there causes more of a stir than if there's 2. So in that type of activist sense, they could use their added numbers in that way more effectively, but not in a way to effectively block legislation if it was a minority or a hung parliament.
And just going back to some of how those Conservative and Freedom parties did, Family First, essentially a revival of the old Family First, not doing too poorly in the lower house. Now you combine that with the vote of the LDP, DLP and Freedom, it gets them to about 6 to 8% statewide. The DLP actually been polling 3rd in St Albans, followed by Vic Socialists, then Greens. The DLP's candidate there is Mark Hobart, a former Freedom Party candidate. Look, obviously, front page of the Victorian newspapers today, this was the Herald Sun, Dan Slam. Looking at the seats there as of midnight last night, they say Daniel Andrews has won a historic 3rd term. He promised to govern for all Victorians as Labor looked to form a clear majority. Meanwhile, over in The Age, it's a bit thicker one here, hope defeats hate. That is the quote from Andrews that he made during that victory speech last night. Also looking at Guy's comments, the Teal Independent set to win Hawthorn. We're not actually sure about that now. And also Greens claiming Richmond. I think we are pretty sure about that. And they've got some images on the back as well. Bunch out of Mulgrave, including with Howard Lee, aka Kim Jong-un. But certainly, they've been out and about, as have we, and you've been seeing that on our live coverage right now. So that's what some of the papers are saying about this Victorian state election results, and we are going to continue covering them live for you, because we know, especially in the upper house, we are still waiting for a lot of those results to come in, and then of course in Narrabeen, supplementary election in a couple of weeks is what we understand. Now taking a look at tomorrow's weather forecast right across the country. Brisbane, heavy showers getting to a top of 30. It's partly cloudy in Sydney with similar conditions in Canberra, both cities in the low 20s. More of the same in Melbourne, though a little bit colder, 19 there, while it'll be 17 in Hobart. Some clouds over in Adelaide, 18. Sunny and 29 in Alice Springs. Perth to get to a sunny top of 29 as well, while in Darwin, there'll be showers, a warm but wet top of 31. A reminder of the top stories we are following on 6 News this hour, and Labor has easily retained majority government in Victoria, picking up several seats as they stay well above the minimum 45 they needed to govern in their own right. Liberal leader Matthew Guy has conceded for the second time in 4 years, today resigning as leader, again with the coalition losing several seats. And that is 6 News for this hour. There is more news 24/7 on our website, 6newsau.com, and on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok and Lit. Just search 6 News AU to find us. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.